Hello everybody, welcome back to another video today. It is the 2021 season, week 2, recap, reaction, response video. You know what it is. We're going to take a look at what I did this past week. Let's pull up my picks from last week. Ooh, super heat, 12-0, 2-0 in my big picks. Perfect week for me this week. We are racking up them points in the pick'ems that's going on there. Good weekend for me. So yeah, I can kind of not a lot of takeaways for this one this weekend. So let's just jump in. Let's start talking about these matches, starting with the North America matches from Friday. I'm going to try to do a bit more of a quick run through of a lot of these matches. My picks are very good this week, so a lot of the matches, not really a ton of things to kind of take away from what we had already known. So I'm going to try to kind of quickly talk about some of these matches. Friday especially was very, very rough, I think. Eternal Titans was not a great series. The Bread Bowl, as people were calling it. Eternal looked okay. This was a really sloppy series. I don't think either team really looked great. This series kind of makes me think these are the two bottom teams in North America right now. Titans managed to pull out the first map. Eternal won the last three. Not much to take away from it. I'll talk a bit more about the Eternals with their second match, but I don't really think there was a lot to gain from this one. These two teams just kind of looked like where we had them already, so I think things are looking to be about the same as what they were in the past. But as we move on to the Gladiators versus the Spitfire, the Gladiators finally getting their first win of the season, and I think it was a pretty big win for them. I didn't watch the series very closely. I had some things going on at the same time, so I don't have a ton of really kind of strong feelings about this one. But what I do think is that the Gladiators, they ran Bird Ring Kevs for almost the entire series. That is something I very much like. I prefer when those are the two they have running. They're the better two players, in my opinion, so that's good. Still want to see Moth have a bigger presence in this lineup. I want to see him play more than what we're seeing with Skewed. Skewed looks fine, but if Moth can only play the Lucio and the Mercy, he can't play a Brig at all, you're losing out on a ton of potential in terms of the compositions you're running that I think you need to be having some... You need to have some more flexibility with Moth. But I think overall this team looked very improved. A big win for them, kind of shaking off some of that rust and the doubters, I think, from last week, where I was already kind of like not that concerned about the Gladiators. To me, this was kind of them just showing that, hey, we're still good. London ran some weird compositions, some unorthodox stuff, and they overall just looked okay. I was kind of surprised the amount of hybrid we saw. I expected more Blase and Shax, but they went with a lot of hybrid, so I think until Sparker is of age, this is something that I'll just keep my eyes out on, because it's a weird team right now, and I think that they are going to be a little more chaotic than Paris is going to be. But overall, I think this is a team to kind of look out for. Moving on to Saturday, the APAC region, New York versus Chengdu. There is nothing to learn about New York from this one. They got completely rolled by Chengdu. Chengdu just outclassed them in every way. New York didn't look prepared. They didn't look ready. So it's to be expected. Chengdu's a very strong team. One of the top teams in APAC right now. It's difficult to look at where this team is and think that anybody really is going to outclass them in a lot of cases. No one's going to completely obliterate, I think, this Chengdu team. We'll talk about their match later on, but it is something that's kind of note. They just beat New York in what they're good at. New York, not as prepared for it. New York has never matched up well against Chengdu. I've always been a firm believer in that. Yes, this is a different roster, but it's much of the same coaching staff from the seasons past. And so for me, it's just not a huge not a huge surprise that Chengdu won, and also not a ton to learn from this series, in my opinion. So moving on to the Fusion against the Spark. This series was interesting. There was some news that came out from Godsby that they were playing this series on high ping, I don't know if it was everybody in the series or just Takoyaki was playing on high ping, or Godsby even. Takoyaki played the second and third maps of this series, which is when Godsby said they were experiencing lag until the end of the third series, or third map basically. They played Gushui for maps 1 and 4. They played Takoyaki for 2 and 3, and then we also saw Godsby play in 2 and 3. They had a ton of switching in this first game for main tank and DPS. I'm sure some of that had to do with these ping problems they were having. Takoyaki, I don't know if he's with the team right now. He didn't look like he was with the rest of the team, but I'm not 100% positive if it's the case. Interesting series, though. I thought Hangzhou actually kind of pushed the Fusion at times. They won the first map. Then they made the switches, had some problems with ping from everything we've heard. And so it's an interesting series to kind of try to learn from, because there were some weird things going on. So I don't really know what to take away from this one. The Fusion won in a way that was very good. The Fusion looked very good, and I think that's something that you kind of have to enjoy. But with now, I can tell you that Takoyaki is not with the team. I think that was probably a big part of the ping problem, was that he was not playing with the team, and that's probably a big part of the reason why I didn't play in the second series that they played against New York. But the Fusion looked good, and I think the Fusion have really started to solidify themselves as one of the best teams in the Overwatch League. And their big test, of course, is their series against Chengdu, which you already saw what the result for that one was. But I think this is a Fusion team that looks very strong. And the Spark, I think, have shown some potential. I wonder if they want Takoyaki to be a full-time starter, if they want him to be playing more over Gushui, if these visa problems will make it more likely when he comes in that he plays more. I don't know, but it's very interesting, and I'm curious to see what happens going forward for this one. But for a debut, I actually thought the Spark did not look too bad against a good Fusion team. Moving to North America, we have the Houston Outlaws, who took on the Paris Eternal. 3-1 win for the Outlaws. Their largest win of the season so far, which is weird thinking about, considering a lot of people would say they went into this week as the best team in North America. And a win over the Eternal is, a 3-1 win. It's the biggest, but it is what it is. Eternal looked okay. It's hard for me to really judge the Eternal. I'm struggling with this team more than any other. A lot of other teams, I can kind of look at them and I can really kind of gauge where they're at. But the Eternal play very uncoordinated, I think. And they just look kind of strange. Their series against Vancouver was so all over the place. There were team fights going over. I think it was like 6-5 or something on Hanamura when they were playing Vancouver. Like, it was just all over the place, and it was weird, and it was really difficult to kind of gauge these teams. And I thought they looked better against Houston, considering Houston's a better opponent, and they were able to put up a better fight. But I'm really struggling to figure out where this Paris Eternal team is at. You at least get the comparison between them and London, since they both played Houston, but I'll wait to give my opinions on that London matchup until I talk about that game. But it's a weird team, this Eternal roster, and I don't know what to make of it. But the Outlaws still look good. They still look strong. I'm still impressed with Jongu and Piggy. We saw some KSF finally. My boy has been freed, and so, good on them for getting the win. Houston Outlaws still looking like a very good team. Really wanting to go into this this tournament as the best team in North America, give themselves a bit more leeway to kind of play against some of these potential weaker teams. So exciting watching this Outlaws team finally. It's very nice. Very happy for them. Uprising versus the Gladiators. Series I did not watch super closely, unfortunately. Once again, Gladiators this week, did not get a chance to really watch them that much, but maybe Gladiators fans should be happy about that. I also want to say, because I didn't say it in the first match between Gladiators and Spitfire, Space's hair is looking really clean. All right, so whoever put in the work on Space's hair, shout out to them. Big shout out to them. once again, it's kind of the same comments about the Gladiators from before. DPS I enjoyed. Still want to see more consistent Moth play. The Uprising, to me, the biggest problem is they're waiting on Gable Shi to come in, and they need another DPS player. I think that what we're seeing with this Uprising team is that they're good. I think, but they're not at their peak yet. And I think once they've brought in Gable Shi and they have that strong Korean core, they get that third DPS player that they can gain more flexibility with. I think that's when this team will start to look really good, and when they'll be able to kind of start punching up and getting potentially some of those wins against your Gladiators, your Mayhem. I think they should be at that point in time, they could be at that point in time better than even the Defiant, the Reign, even potentially. Like, these are teams that they should be looking to try to swing up against and be better than. And so that, for me, is what I'm looking for, is how they perform against some of these other teams when their roster is at its more solidified, strong point. We have a bit of time, I think, until we get there, but they've shown some promise. They have looked pretty good at times, and they've had some strong players come up pretty big, but still waiting on the overall kind of clicking for this Uprising roster. But let's move on to my first big pick of the week. Washington Justice took on the Dallas Fuel. 3-1 win for the Justice. And oh boy, what a great treat of a series this one was. Main tank galore glory in this one. Fearless had an incredible series. Mag had an incredible series. An incredible debut as a rookie. What a series this one was. I want to say that this is probably one of my favorite teams to watch right now, this Washington Justice team. I think they have a very good argument of potentially being right now the best team in North America, potentially the best team in the Overwatch League. I have no doubt this Justice team is going to be competing in this Melee qualifiers tournament, or like the top 6 North America teams. I think that they just looked so strong against the Dallas Fuel. The Dallas Fuel have been good, right? Yeah, they lost to the Houston Outlaws, but the Houston Outlaws look very good. They beat the LA Gladiators pretty handily. Okay, all right. And then they also lose to the Justice, a good Justice team. And I'm really, really, really enjoying what I am seeing out of this team here, because they have looked really, really strong in what we have seen from them. Decay looked good. One of the teams I actually thought one of the people I thought looked good, I thought Jerry looked really good when he played. I thought Assassin looked good. I thought that the tanks looked good, of course. We kind of knew they were playing well, but I think that was kind of where we really saw it kind of coming this week. This Justice team looks really solid. I thought the supports played well. I thought Closure had a pretty good series. I really do think this Justice team has an argument potentially to be the best team in North America. I'm not ready to say they're the best team in the league yet. I'll talk a bit more about who I think it is in a little bit, but really good performance from the Justice. I think they looked very good in their debut, but I still want to give credit to Fearless. Fearless set a record for most Primal Rage final blows, I believe, maybe eliminations, but 16 Primal Rage kills on Watchpoint Gibraltar is a record, and I believe Mag had 15 later on in the series. This was a really good series. Mag is as good as I think people expected him to be. Fury played out of his mind. He diffed Hanbin. I mean, it was Fury outclassed him at times, and so this really was a great series. It's a treat of a series. On paper, it looks pretty one-sided, and I think in some cases it was somewhat one-sided for the Justice, but I think this Justice team is a legit contender, and I cannot wait to see where this Dallas Fuel team ends up. When they finally get that hit scan specialist that they're looking for, this is going to be an incredible team, and I think this is a rivalry that might end up developing and being pretty solid going forward. But let's move on to APAC. Hangzhou Spark took on the NYXL. It was a 3-1 victory for the NYXL, but it wasn't, to me, very convincing. There were some moments that they looked very good. I thought on, I believe it was Havana, they looked very good. I'm getting matches mixed up. I take it back. They looked okay on Havana. They looked better on Havana. They had some moments on Havana. The way they defended Havana was very interesting. They played very close to the spawn door on Havana, which kind of helped them gain a lot of time to build up ultimates again, to be able to stop the Spark from getting that push into the checkpoint. So I think they had some strategies that looked very good. They had some nice rotations that they were using, and they had some things that looked kind of planned and prepared that I thought were interesting, but I don't think they looked incredible. I thought MCD actually had the better of Jonak in most of this series, so it was interesting to see these two teams go up against each other. This is, two teams that we haven't seen a ton of. It's only their second match. We didn't see a bunch of Guangbong. We only saw them play one map in this series, and they didn't even win it. I've seen a lot of people saying that they are wondering what New York's problem with Guangbong is, considering he has not really gotten any playtime, but I don't know if the meta really favors him right now as well as it could. Though he is very good. So overall, though, I actually am pretty happy with what New York was able to do. I thought Yakpong looked pretty good. But this is a team that does have a lot of room that they have to grow, and they didn't have some work to do before I think they're ready. They have some really big matches coming up. Right now, they're in 5th in APAC. They have a tied record with Seoul and Shanghai. They play both of those teams next week, so if they can get a win, that would really help them potentially get in. So that's a team that really has an interesting week next week, but I wouldn't give a ton of faith if I were an NYXL fan, which I am, in them doing that, just because I don't think they looked better than either of those two teams. But we'll see what happens, because I do think the NYXL have some potential. The Spark were very consistent with their roster. I don't think they made a single swap this series. Like I said, MCD looked really good. I thought he was a standout player for me. I thought he outplayed Jonak a lot. And so I think the Spark have... The thing that they were doing that worried me the most would be the potential of them constantly switching between players, but have not really been doing that. So it's early. Those things could change over time, but as it is right now, I actually think that the Spark have done a lot to alleviate some of my concerns and fears for this team. But let's move on to the Chengdu Hunters against Philadelphia Fusion, the game that I think most people were most excited for going into this week. And it did not disappoint. I actually thought the series was very good. Philadelphia Fusion with a 3-1 victory in this one, and it was pretty convincing in a lot of cases. The map that they lost was Volskaya Industries. Fusion had a pretty rough first defense, and that was just kind of where the series was won. Chengdu ended up with 4 minutes left. Philly didn't finish with time in the bank on their second, on their attack. But the second defense, they had a pretty strong defense. A defense you'd be pretty proud of if, you weren't a team that had to hold for 4 minutes. So I give them a lot of credit. I don't think this series was very favorable for Chengdu. Like I said, they had one really good map and one really good round of attack. And then the second half of the series, really, Philly looked pretty good. But it just came down to ultimates, and eventually Chengdu was able to win it, because that's kind of the way Assault works. Usually you're going to win on Assault. But I thought Carpe played incredibly. I thought Rascal looked really good. I thought that Mono and Hotba looked very good together. I never thought I would see that happen, and so I would like to formally apologize to Hotba for all of the flack I gave him last season. I think the NYXL coaching staff was probably the main issue there last season, and so I think that they deserve a lot of credit with this 9K coaching staff that the Fusion have put together to really make those two look really good together. And I think this Fusion team is probably right now, if I had to say, they look like they're the best team in the Overwatch League right now. I think that they've just looked so much more clinical. They've looked really, really good. I think they have a very good chance at winning this May Melee tournament. I really do think they have everything going their way right now. Hunters look good, but they got outclassed by a Fusion team that, this Hunters team beat Shanghai 3-0. They beat New York 3-0. Like, they were dominating teams, and the Fusion just came out and played smart, played well, played together, played coordinated, and they just managed to pull off a really big win against the Good Hunters team. So I look at the Fusion right now as probably the best team in the Overwatch League. Certainly right now looking like the best team in APAC. And one of the few teams that has played 4 matches so far. So where it is right now, I would say they are my favorite for the May Melee tournament. But we'll see what happens as the qualifiers continue on. Let's move on to the final 3 matches of the week. We have the North America matches from Sunday. As expected, Outlaws, Fuel, Justice all get their big wins. Outlaws with a 3-0 over the London Spitfire, their first 3-0 of the season. My boy KSF, the man, the myth, the legend, coming in, dominant victory for the Outlaws. KSF clapping, winning the Tracer duel, the greatest player of all time. What he did against the Eternal was just a preview of his evolution to become the greatest Overwatch League player of all time. The KSF hype train rolls on. Choo choo, we keep it going. This series was not very close. Outlaws really outclassed them in every way. They end up 4-0 going into the May Melee, so they have that number 1 overall spot guaranteed. Well, not guaranteed, I guess. They're guaranteed to be in. The Justice could pass them. The Mayhem could pass them. The Defiant could pass them, depending on what they do in these last couple of weeks. These last couple of matches for them. But overall, Outlaws look very good. They look like one of the best teams in the Overwatch League right now. And certainly right now, definitely arguments to be had for them being the top team in North America. Dallas Fuel really just kind of outclassed the Uprising. It was a 3-0 for the Fuel. Once again, Outlaws 3-0, Fuel 3-0. Not even a close series. Huge statement win for the Fuel, really kind of getting their stuff together. Like I said before with the Uprising, they have room to grow. They have a lot of stuff that needs to change before they're ready to go, I think. I know Myeonbong tweeted out something about, how much work they've put in, and that they know they're good, but they just aren't quite there yet. So this is a good team that just has some room to grow, but the Fuel right now look really good. When they get their hitscan player, they're going to be insane. They're going to be such a strong team. They're going to be so good. They're going to be able to beat pretty much anybody. So really huge fan of what we've seen from the Fuel, and I think they are only going to get better from here on out. Final match of the weekend was a 3-1 victory for the Washington Justice over the Vancouver Titans. The fact that it was a 3-1 is pretty notable because the Titans have not been 3-0'd yet this season. They've actually been pretty consistent in a lot of their matches. They've been able to kind of win maps here and there. Their win on Temple of Anubis was pretty convincing, actually. They really outclassed the Justice on that map. But the Justice look really good still. They still have room to grow, of course, but they're only going to get better from here on out. I think they probably, right now, I would say look to be the best team in the Overwatch League in North America, at least. Yeah, they had a 3-1 against the Titans, but you drop maps here and there. That doesn't really tell you a whole lot. But it's the way in which they beat the Fuel and the way in which they dominated the Titans on the other 3 maps that really make me confident about this Justice team, that they're only going to get better. We haven't seen them up against the likes of the Shock or, the Gladiators, the Mayhem, some of the other teams we look at as being really good. The Outlaws, obviously, but they look really good, and I think that they are a team to watch out for right now. They have a lot of momentum, I think, going towards them. They have some big matches coming up here at the end of the season, the end of the May Melee, I should say, so I'm excited to see this team continue to play, but good week for me, man. Great for the picks. I thought it was a great weekend. There's some really good matches. Justice Fuel was definitely the match of the weekend for me, but really good matches this weekend, so I'm quite pleased with what we had. Real quickly, I want to take a look at the standings. I'll have to update these standings to include the points in the future, but here's where things stand right now. You can see the Fusion up there at 4-0. They are your top team going into the APAC tournament, guaranteed. Nobody else can overtake them. Chengdu Hunters have also locked up a spot in the tournament, but they have not guaranteed themselves the number 2 spot, but they are guaranteed a spot in there. Houston Outlaws guaranteed a spot for the NA region. The Vancouver Titans are eliminated from contention for the NA region. They cannot get in to the top 6 there. So It'll be interesting to see what happens. There's some teams really fighting. I mean, right now, the believe it or not, the Shock are on the outside looking in, but they should get in. They have to play the Mayhem, which could be a bit of a toughie, but I think the Shock look better, and I think that that's a match to kind of keep your eyes out for. The matches I'm going to kind of give a little preview for next week. The NYXL play both the Seoul Dynasty and the Shanghai Dragons. They are the two teams ahead of them. So if New York can pull off one of those wins or both of those wins, they really do put themselves in a pretty good position going into the APAC tournament. But also, they have to play the two teams ahead of them. And so that's kind of a really good group of matches we have going on there. I believe Seoul plays the Valiant as their other match. And I think Shanghai might play the Spark. So it'll be an interesting group there. The APAC region, I think, is going to have some really exciting matches. But a very big fan of what we've seen so far this season. And it's only going to get better from here on out. So, yeah, that's all for me for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing for more content like this in the future. But I very much thank you all for watching. Comment down below your thoughts on this past weekend. And yeah, I hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.